For context, this story involves my daughter, Laura, 36 female, her daughter, Emily, 17 female, and Laura's now estranged husband, Mark, 40 male. It's long, but I think every detail matters in understanding how things unfolded. I became a father at a young age, and while I did my best to provide for Laura, I always felt I could have done more. So when Emily was born, I made a promise to myself. I would do everything I could to ensure her future was secure. When Emily was a baby, I started a college fund for her. It wasn't much at first, just a few $100s here and there. But over time, it grew. I made sacrifices to contribute to that fund, skipping vacations and foregoing luxuries to ensure Emily would have opportunities. By the time she turned 17, the account had a little over $40,000 in it. Laura always knew about the fund, and so did Emily. It wasn't a secret. Then one day, I decided to give it to Laura so she could manage it, as I fully trusted her and had no doubts that she wants the best for her daughters. It was a promise to my granddaughter that she'd have the chance to go to college without the financial burden so many young people face. Laura had been a single mom for most of Emily's life. She worked hard, and while our relationship had its ups and downs, I was proud of her resilience. About 3 years ago, she met Mark, a divorced dad with a teenage son, Ethan, 19 male. From the beginning, I had reservations about Mark. He was charming, too charming. He always seemed to be trying a little too hard to win people over, including me. Laura, however, was smitten. She said Mark made her feel special, like she finally had a partner who appreciated her. When Laura and Mark got married 2 years ago, I tried to be supportive despite my doubts. I welcomed Mark and Ethan into the family, even though something about Mark felt off. He was flashy, always bragging about his business ventures, but whenever I asked for specifics, his answers were vague. Still, Laura seemed happy, and I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Everything came to a head about a year ago. Ethan had recently turned 18 and graduated high school. He wanted a car, claiming he needed it for work. According to Mark, this car was a necessity that they couldn't wait to save up for. Instead of finding a reasonable solution, Mark and Laura decided to use Emily's college fund to buy Ethan a brand new car. Not just any car, a $40,000 fully loaded SUV. When Laura called me to tell me, I was floored. I asked her how she could possibly think this was okay. Her response was maddening. "Ethan is part of the family now, Dad. He needs this car for work, and we'll figure out something for Emily later. You can always help rebuild her fund." I couldn't believe it. This wasn't just about the money. It was about the betrayal. That fund was a promise to Emily, and Laura had taken it without a second thought. Emily was devastated. She had worked so hard in school, maintaining excellent grades and participating in extracurriculars, all with the dream of going to a good university. Now, thanks to her mother's decision, her future was suddenly uncertain. I told Laura that what she'd done was selfish and irresponsible, but she brushed me off. She said that as part of a blended family, sacrifices had to be made, and that I should support her decision. I told her she was on her own, and that I wouldn't contribute another cent to help her fix her mistake. After the car incident, Emily couldn't stand living with her mother anymore. She moved in with me and cut off almost all communication with Laura and Mark. I did my best to comfort her, but the damage was done. Meanwhile, Laura and Mark's marriage began to show cracks. Mark, it turned out, wasn't as stable or reliable as he pretended to be. Emily heard that he started coming home late, spending weekends on business trips, and withdrawing emotionally. Laura confided in me that she suspected he was cheating, but I told her I didn't want to get involved. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with him. A few months ago, Laura's worst fears were confirmed. Mark left her for another woman. Not only that, but he emptied their joint savings account and took the SUV they'd bought for Ethan. Laura was left with nothing but debt and regret. Ethan went with Mark, cutting all ties with Laura. Then, last week, Laura showed up at my house unannounced. She was crying, saying she had nowhere else to go. She asked me to help her financially, claiming she couldn't pay her bills or support herself. She also begged me to help rebuild Emily's college fund, saying she wanted to make things right. I didn't even let her finish. I told her that she had already made her choices and that her actions had consequences. "Why should I bail you out now?" I asked. "You had $40,000 set aside for your daughter's future, and you spent it on a car for someone else's son. Now you're asking me to fix it? No, I'm done." She started sobbing, saying she didn't know Mark would leave her and that she'd made a mistake. I told her that mistake was hers to fix, not mine. I reminded her that she had betrayed her own daughter by prioritizing Mark and Ethan over Emily. When she begged me to reconsider, I shut the door in her face. Emily has been staying with me throughout all of this. She's working part-time while finishing high school, and she's doing her best to stay optimistic about the future. We've had long talks about her mother's actions, and while she loves Laura, she feels deeply betrayed. She said she's not ready to forgive her and doesn't know if she ever will. I've started rebuilding her college fund, though it won't be anywhere near the original amount by the time she starts school. I've also been helping her look into scholarships and financial aid. Since the incident, Laura's been telling anyone who will listen that I'm being cruel and unforgiving. Some family members have sided with her, saying I should let bygones be bygones and help her out. They argue that she's learned her lesson and deserves another chance. Others, however, fully support my decision. They say Laura needs to face the consequences of her actions and that enabling her would only make things worse. I know shutting the door in my daughter's face might seem harsh, but I couldn't stomach the idea of rewarding her selfishness and irresponsibility. Was I wrong to refuse to help her, or did she get exactly what she deserved? Laura's decision to use Emily's college fund to buy a car for someone else's son was one of the most selfish, short-sighted things I've ever heard. That money wasn't hers to take, and her dismissive attitude towards OP's concerns shows just how entitled and blindsided she became after marrying Mark. Now that Mark's left her, she's conveniently realized she made a mistake and expects OP to clean up the mess? Absolutely not. OP gave her every opportunity to make things right before, and she chose to ignore OP. Actions have consequences, and Laura's finally facing hers. Good on OP for standing up for Emily. Emily is a lucky girl to have OP. This story absolutely broke my heart for Emily. Imagine working so hard in school, knowing there's a fund set aside for your future, only to have it stolen for a luxury car that benefits someone else. Laura didn't just fail as a mother. She actively sabotaged her daughter's dreams. OP, you're not the a-hole. Your loyalty is exactly where it should be, with Emily. She's the true victim here, and it's clear that you're doing everything in your power to make things right for her. Laura is reaping what she sowed. Hopefully, this will be the wake-up call she needs to start taking responsibility for her actions. Not the a-hole, but let's break this down. 1. Laura didn't just make a mistake. She prioritized her new husband and his son over her own child in a way that was both selfish and cruel. 2. She dismissed your legitimate concerns and assumed you'd swoop in to save her when things inevitably fell apart. 3. Now that her life is imploded, she expects you to bail her out financially and emotionally without any acknowledgement of the pain she caused Emily. You did the right thing by setting firm boundaries. If you cave now, you'll only be enabling her pattern of selfishness. Laura needs to figure out how to fix this on her own, and maybe, just maybe, it'll help her grow as a person. Not the a-hole. Shutting the door in her face might seem harsh, but I understand where you're coming from. Laura's choices led her to this point, and it's not your job to fix the mess she created. That said, I hope there's a path for reconciliation eventually, for Emily's sake if nothing else. Laura was clearly manipulated by Mark, but that doesn't excuse what she did to her daughter. If she genuinely wants to make amends, she needs to show it through actions, not just words. Maybe consider letting her back into your life if she demonstrates real accountability and makes an effort to rebuild trust with Emily. Until then, keep doing what you're doing, supporting your granddaughter and protecting her future. I, 46 female, am marrying my fiancé, 50 male. He has a daughter, Davina, 18 female, from his previous marriage. I don't have any children, nor do I want any. I've been with him for 11 years now. Davina and I are close. I love her like a daughter. My sister, 45 female, has a daughter, Jess, 18 female. Now, it should be noted that Davina is an only child. She doesn't have any step or half-siblings on her mother's side as well. This will be important later. Davina and Jess used to be friends. They go to the same school. But when they got to high school, they grew apart. Davina became popular. She made a lot of friends. Jess is introverted. She didn't like being in the crowd, so she just stopped associating with her. She started making up excuses when Davina would ask her to hang out, just the two of them. My sister is a single mom. I would sometimes help her with Jess when she was little. She would come over to my place at times before she got into high school. But ever since she started avoiding Davina, she doesn't come over unless necessary. I've spoken to both Jess and Davina multiple times, and both have confirmed there is no aggression. When I got engaged, Jess asked me if she could have a part in the wedding. I said sure. Now I have asked Davina to be maid of honor and Jess to be a bridesmaid. Jess wasn't happy Davina was getting a more important role. Jess asked me to not give Davina a role at all, that she should be a regular guest. I said no. Sister called me and asked the same thing. I said no to her as well. When I asked them why, their reply was literally, "I don't like her." A few weeks ago, Dee and I ran into them at the mall. Davina was attempting to make small talk with Jess, but she just snapped at her. When Davina said, "Sorry, I didn't know you were in a bad mood," my sister snapped at me about how Davina is being spoiled as an only child, how she abandoned Jess once she got her flashy friends, how I am enabling Davina to let Jess continue to live in Davina's shadow, about how fake I am when I speak to Dee's mom when I meet her at school games. She said this was harming Jess's mental health. At this point, Davina excused herself and called her mom to pick her up. Sis said if I continue having a relationship with Davina, she and Jess will no longer want a relationship with me. When I reminded her that she would be my stepdaughter soon, she said she wants me to be civil with her and not trying to be her second mom. She said it was time I returned to our family instead of a random teenager. I said she and Jess were my family, but I also chose Davina to be my family when I chose to be with my fiancé. Jess started crying, people started staring, so we just left. I don't know what Sis told everyone, but now a lot of family members have blocked me. My parents and fiancé are on my side, but Davina has started spending more time at her mom's. Have I been unknowingly cruel to Jess? Should I take some time to just focus on Jess? Am I the a-hole? Edit. Spoke to mom who spoke to Sis. We'll be meeting Sis after work. Not the a-hole. You are 100% doing the right thing by your husband and soon-to-be stepdaughter. I commend your actions. Your sister is obviously not getting the truth from Jess. I mean, did she seriously think you wouldn't have your stepdaughter be involved in her own father's wedding? Sit your sister down without Jess and find out if she knows the whole story. Oh, cripes, what a mess. First, you are not the a-hole. I think your sister and niece are being jealous and severely overreacting, especially considering that you are doing 100% the right thing by Davina and your fiancé. You are correct in saying that you have chosen this family for yourself, and by treating your future stepdaughter as your own is both beautiful and healthy. I do think, though, that you need to sit down with your sister and speak honestly about why they are so resentful of your life and family. Ask her why she thinks she and her daughter should be prioritized. You might get some surprising insight into their emotional states. I will add that their mental states are not your responsibility, but you should at least find out if they are willing to see your side. If they don't meet with you halfway, then you have your answer. But for your own sanity, reach out. Not the a-hole. You will be married to Davina's father, and you will be her stepmother. You have to put her first. Jess isn't your child. But something is going on. Your sister and Jess haven't told you everything. I would have a talk with your sister and find out exactly why. Tell her you can't possibly agree to something so asinine unless you know why. And this is a big thing she is expecting of you. And if she can't come clean with you, no contact. Hating someone because they're popular is the same as hating someone because they're not. Update. I spoke to my sister 2 days ago. Apparently the issue between the girls was a boy. Yes, a boy. Jess liked him during freshman year, but he didn't like her back. Junior year, he starts going out with Davina, and they are still together. Jess asked Dee to break up with him without giving her a reason to do so, and got upset when she didn't. Seeing Jess upset, Sister also asked Davina to break up with him one day after showing up where Davina works. Yes, she cornered a kid during her work. Davina laughed in her face and said no. Other than that, she herself admitted Dee had done nothing to them. And those of you who said she wanted money, you were also right. My sister and Jess were under the impression that I would offer to pay for Jess's college. I was surprised, and when I asked why, her response was, "Because we are family and you are helping with a random person's college." I'm only paying for Davina's books. My fiancé and Dee's mom are paying for everything else because she is not eligible for scholarships because parents have a higher income. At this point, I was angry, and I told her I would have offered to pay for Jess's books as well, but now I'm not giving her a penny. Sis looked horrified, but I left before she could say anything. Later, someone added me to a group chat with family members who had earlier blocked me. They said I had strayed from family and I should come back to them, that I can make it up to them by fully paying for Jess and her brother's college. I left the chat and blocked them all. Won't be talking to them anytime soon. Earlier today, I spoke to Dee's mom. She agreed to let me pick her up from work. I spoke to Dee, took her to dinner, explained everything. She was happy. Apparently, sister had told Jess she was meeting me, and Jess cornered her at school and told her I wouldn't want her in my life anymore. Davina was relieved to know it wasn't happening. She will be coming here tomorrow. New account for privacy purposes. My husband and I are in our 30s. We have been married 10 years and have twin sons together. My husband also has a daughter, 20. He doesn't speak to his daughter's mother anymore, and she hasn't been in either of their lives for a very long time. I helped raise my stepdaughter, and I love her, but she was an only child for a very long time, and my husband gave her the princess treatment. She had a tendency to act very spoiled when she was younger, but mostly grew out of that after moving out at 18. My husband and I both have well-paying, full-time jobs, but I've been the primary breadwinner for the majority of our relationship. I also have a sizable inheritance from my grandfather, which we used to buy our home, pay for our son's daycare, etc. Last April, my stepdaughter got engaged. My husband and I were both very happy for them, and for our wedding gift, we offered to help finance her wedding plans. They were supposed to get married this August, but the chosen venue told us they'd either have to reschedule to next year or change their guest list to less than 50, and that everyone would have to wear masks. The original wedding has 200 guests. Stepdaughter asked if my husband and I could pay for a different venue she found that would be available in October. I already paid a very large non-refundable deposit for the original venue, plus extra for open bar services that would be provided. We told her no, she'd have to wait like the other brides who had to postpone for virus. And waiting another year won't be so terrible. Stepdaughter was furious, and apparently very impatient to get married. Without consulting me or my husband first, she canceled the venue, caterer, florist, and photographer, all of which my husband and I paid the deposit on. I was sick of her little tantrum and told her she'd need to find someone else to help pay for what she wanted, because she wasn't going to get a penny more from me unless it was for cab fare to go to the courthouse to elope, because that's the wedding she deserved for being ungrateful. She has since called her dad sobbing multiple times and apologizing and begging for a second chance. I called all the people she canceled, and they were mostly understanding, and a few offered to renew the contract stepdaughter terminated. I said no and have cut my losses on this issue, which my husband disagrees with, and says I'm being too harsh. I told him I would no longer enable stepdaughter's bratty behavior, and if he wanted to pay, he could use his own income. Mine paid for 60% of the wedding costs. Husband thinks I'm being just as hard-headed and unreasonable as stepdaughter. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. If she took it upon herself to cancel everything you paid deposits on because she was impatient, she can figure it out herself. You were more than generous here, and it's probably time she learned that her actions have consequences. Not the a-hole. You paid for her wedding once. You shouldn't pay for it a second time. If she's old enough to get married, she's old enough to pay for her own wedding. Not the a-hole. She should have been grateful you were willing to pay for anything at all. A lot of weddings are now paid for by the couple. You paid a lot already, and for her to just expect you to pay all that again, possibly more than before, is ridiculous. She made a choice, and she needs to deal with the consequences. I am sorry you and your hubby aren't on the same page. Spoiling her like that isn't doing her any favors. I'm 26 female, he is 28 male, and his sister is 36 female. Now, I do want to note that I actually really enjoy helping people out in any way I can. It makes me feel accomplished for whatever reason, or like I'm doing a good deed. My sister-in-law took advantage of my kindness and drove it into the ground. So basically, since I married my husband and we moved back to the States, my sister-in-law almost acts like she expects things from me. She doesn't ask us to do anything, but rather calls and tells us what we need to do for her. Her most recent need is for us to take her daughter for a week, because she can't handle life after her cat got ran over a month ago. This was after she told me she needed our help paying for an urn for her cat, as well as the cremation. We didn't help her out with that one. Just to put things into perspective here, she has asked me for thousands of dollars within the course of 4 years to pay off her car's back payment, pay taxes, get a new set of tires, groceries, new appliances, etc. She has asked to put things in my name because I have good credit and she does not. She has made me clean her yard for my birthday party that she wanted to throw me, which turned out to be a Father's Day party and not a birthday party, and I happened to be conned into buying all the food. She randomly asks me to watch her kid all the time, despite knowing I work full-time and have kids of my own to worry about. If I tell her no to any of these things, she instantly calls up the rest of the family and says, "I don't know what's going on with Victoria lately. She's been acting really off." Anyways, after she told me to take her kid for a week, I said no. The following day we had to go there to pick up our canoe that was stored in her garage. And she said, "Since I stored this for you, I think you guys owe me." I flipped out. I was already at my breaking point, and hearing her say this ticked me right off. I said, "I don't owe you anything. I have given you thousands of dollars that you have never paid back. I have watched your kid multiple times for free. I have given you rides and paid for your groceries, and what have you given me in return?" That's right, a place to store our canoe. If anything, you owe us. My husband told me to calm down, so I looked at him and said, "Really? Me calm down? Because I'm pissed that people keep using us? Go ahead and keep enabling this behavior and see how quickly it pushes me away." I walked out, got into my car and left. My husband and I have talked about this multiple times, and he has told me to say something to her, but when I do, he tells me to calm down. I've since gotten a text from sister-in-law telling me that I overreacted and offended her, and that my behavior makes her think I'm an a-hole. My husband has apologized to me. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I hope your husband groveled nicely. I doubt he was the one impacted by most of the non-financial requests. Cut your sister off, and if she tries to spin stories to the rest of your family, explain clearly the number of times you've helped her and how entitled she was being. Not the a-hole, and you know this. But your husband needs to pull his head out of his sister's butt and put some boundaries in place with his sister and parents. He is, presumably, a grown man with kids of his own. It's time to grow up and stop playing both sides of the fence. He tells you to stand up to his sister behind her back, and when you do, he defends her. Nope, that's not how that works. Not only do you need to put healthy boundaries in place with his family, but also with him. He needs to either support you when you do his job for him, standing up to and establishing boundaries with his family, or you need to send his weak, spineless butt off to live with his sister and niece. I have a daughter, 14, from a previous marriage. My current wife and I met 6 years ago, married for a little less than 2. My daughter is currently staying with us since her mom is recovering from surgery and can't look after her. So, I love my wife, but I'll be the first to admit that she can be aggressive when she feels really insecure or attacked. She's had therapy in recent years to combat this, but the issue reared its ugly head again in the worst way. Anyways, what happened was my daughter and my wife were cooking dinner together. Daughter was making pasta and wife was making the sauce. My wife is dyslexic and it's one of her biggest insecurities, being thought of as dumb growing up. So halfway through cooking, daughter tested the sauce and goes, "Oh my God, you used vinegar instead of wine. It's so sour." Daughter checks the bottle of white wine and it turns out to be white wine vinegar. Wife then says, "No, that's wine, I checked." Daughter says, "No way, it says vinegar. Can you not read?" I heard the exchange. My daughter was being snarky, but not really mean. Just a joking know-it-all teenager kind of tone. But I know my wife's sore spots, so I tried to defuse, but it was too late. My wife snapped, grabbed the bottle and chucked it into the trash. She then directed her anger at my daughter and said something like, I'm paraphrasing, "Fine, don't eat the pasta. You don't need the extra calories anyways with the kind of weight you're carrying. Your mom ever buy you any mirrors?" I was in shock and yelled my wife's name for her to stop. My wife gives me a, "What? I didn't start it" kind of look, and not long after, we see my daughter come downstairs with a backpack and run out to the street. When I get to her, she's just sobbing and yelling angrily and threatening to run away. She's absolutely refusing to go back inside, so I thought the best course of action is to book a nearby hotel and let them both cool down. It was a split-second decision because I didn't want her roaming the streets in a strange city. Long story short, it's been a day and a half and things are worse. Wife is upset I let my daughter stay elsewhere because she thinks I'm enabling a childish tantrum. Wife is also mad I chose to stay with daughter the first night because I was worried she might do something unhealthy. I'm stressed and I think I might have done the wrong things, but I'm racking my brain to think what I should have or should be doing instead. I don't want to lose my wife, but I can't stand to see her talk like that to my daughter either. Not the a-hole. Your wife is horrendous. Your daughter is a child who does not deserve to be attacked. And of course you should stay with your child if she's at a hotel. Not the a-hole, but holy crap does your wife have issues. She really went for the jugular after some light teasing from a teenager. Just out of curiosity, is your wife gainfully employed? How does she coexist with other humans with those kind of issues? You guys need to find new therapists or ask for refunds from her old ones. You should protect your daughter above all else. This is the kind of stuff that gives kids eating disorders. Your wife is a disgrace for attacking a teenager, and you would be a disgrace if you didn't stand up for your own daughter. I'm 34, and my sister Amanda is 30. Amanda became a single mom at 20 after her boyfriend ghosted her when she told him she was pregnant. From the moment Ethan was born, it was clear that Amanda wasn't ready for motherhood. She struggled to keep a job, manage her time, and create a stable environment for her son. As the older sibling, I stepped in to help. I don't have kids of my own and have a stable career, so I started sending Amanda money every month. At first, it was occasional help for things like diapers or unexpected bills. But as Ethan grew older, the expenses increased. School fees, extracurricular activities, clothing, and other necessities. Over the past 5 years, I've been consistently sending Amanda $1,500 a month to help raise Ethan. It wasn't easy for me financially, but I didn't mind because I loved Ethan and wanted to give him the opportunities he deserved. Amanda always assured me that the money was going directly to him, and I trusted her. A few months ago, Amanda asked me to babysit Ethan for a weekend while she went on a self-care retreat. She claimed she needed time to recharge because being a single mom was overwhelming. I agreed, as I adore Ethan and love spending time with him. That Saturday evening, while we were watching a movie, Ethan made a casual comment that stopped me in my tracks. He said, "I got kicked out of school because mom didn't pay the fees." At first, I thought he might be confused, so I gently asked him to explain. He hesitated, but eventually told me that he hadn't been in school for over 2 months because his tuition hadn't been paid. His teacher had told him he couldn't come back until the fees were settled. I was stunned. I had been sending Amanda money specifically for Ethan's schooling. Where had all that money gone? I didn't want to alarm Ethan, so I reassured him that everything would be okay. After putting him to bed, I decided to dig deeper. That night, I logged into Ethan's school portal. Amanda had shared the login details with me years ago in case of emergencies. What I found was heartbreaking. His tuition hadn't been paid for nearly a year, and the school had sent multiple warnings before finally expelling him. Ethan's account was marked as inactive, and the outstanding balance was several $1,000s. The more I looked, the worse it got. I reached out to his extracurricular programs and found out that his sports and music lessons had been canceled long ago due to non-payment. I even called his pediatrician's office and learned that he hadn't had a checkup in over a year. I was livid and confused. Amanda had always claimed the money I sent to her was being used for Ethan's needs. It was clear that this wasn't the case. I started looking through her social media and quickly found the answer. Amanda had been using the money to fund her lifestyle. Weekend getaways, designer clothes, expensive dinners, and nights out with friends. She even had posted about upgrading her car, something she'd conveniently failed to mention to me. When Amanda returned from her self-care retreat, I confronted her. I asked her point blank where the money had been going and why Ethan wasn't in school. At first, she tried to deny everything, but when I showed her the evidence I'd gathered, she became defensive. "I've been under a lot of stress," she said. "I need those things to stay sane. Besides, Ethan doesn't need all that fancy stuff anyway." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I reminded her that the money was meant for Ethan, for his education, for his well-being, and his future. But Amanda refused to take responsibility. Instead, she turned the blame on me, accusing me of interfering in her life and judging her choices. She even tried to guilt-trip me, saying, "You don't know how hard it is to be a single mom." That was the moment I realized she wasn't going to change. I couldn't trust her to put Ethan's needs first, and I wasn't going to stand by and let him continue to suffer because of her selfishness. The next day, I contacted Child Protective Services. I explained the situation in detail, providing all the evidence I had gathered. CPS launched an investigation, and what they found confirmed my worst fears. The investigation revealed everything I had already seen: a poorly maintained home, little food, and a child who was being neglected despite ample financial resources. Ethan's interview with CPS broke my heart. He admitted he often felt lonely and that he didn't understand why his mom was always out, and that he was embarrassed to tell his friends he wasn't in school anymore. After their assessment, CPS determined that Amanda was not providing a safe or stable environment for Ethan. They asked if I would be willing to take temporary custody, and I agreed without hesitation. I've since filed for permanent guardianship. When Amanda found out that CPS had granted me custody, she exploded. She accused me of stealing her son and ruining her life. She refused to take any accountability, insisting that she was doing her best and that I had no right to interfere. Our parents were furious with me too, but for different reasons. They believe I should have handled the situation privately instead of involving CPS. They've called me a selfish and pathetic human for tearing the family apart, and said I should have just given Amanda more support because she's a struggling single mother. I tried explaining that I had already been supporting her for years and that she had misused the money I gave her, but they refused to listen. Meanwhile, Amanda has been bad-mouthing me to everyone. She's posted on social media, accusing me of being controlling and vindictive. Some of our extended family members have sided with her, saying I should have given her another chance. Others support me and believe I did the right thing by prioritizing Ethan's well-being. Since coming to live with me, Ethan has been thriving. I immediately enrolled him in school and paid off his overdue tuition. I also took him to the doctor for a full checkup and arranged therapy sessions to help him process everything he's been through. In just a few weeks, I've seen such a positive change in him. He's smiling more, making new friends, and excelling in his classes. For the first time in a long time, he feels safe and secure. He even told me, "I'm so happy to live here with you. It feels like home." Amanda has made it clear that she plans to fight for custody. She's been telling everyone that I manipulated CPS and that she's the victim of a conspiracy. She even hired a lawyer, though I'm confident that the evidence of her neglect will outweigh her claims. My parents continue to pressure me to return Ethan to Amanda, but I told them it's not my decision to make. Ethan's safety and happiness are my top priorities, and I won't let him go back to a situation where he's neglected and mistreated. I know I did the right thing by stepping in, but the backlash has been overwhelming. My family is divided, and I've been painted as the villain by Amanda and her supporters. Still, I can't regret my decision. Ethan deserves a stable, loving home, and I'm determined to give that to him. It's heartbreaking to see how deeply entrenched Amanda is in her denial and how much my parents are enabling her. I hope that one day they'll see the bigger picture and understand that this was never about punishing Amanda. It was about protecting Ethan. Reddit. Am I the a-hole for taking custody of my nephew and involving CPS after discovering my sister's lies and neglect? Let's be clear. This isn't OP's fault, and it's not about tearing the family apart. Amanda's neglect and selfishness are what caused this situation. OP has been sending her a significant amount of money every month for years, and instead of using it for Ethan, she chose to prioritize her own luxuries. Ethan's living conditions and his admission about being out of school prove that OP had no choice but to act. OP's parents need to take a hard look at the reality here. Amanda let her son down, not OP. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. You've gone above and beyond for your sister and nephew, and her actions are nothing short of disgraceful. You trusted her, and she took advantage of your generosity to fund her own lifestyle while neglecting Ethan's basic needs. Involving CPS was the right call. This wasn't something you could fix with more money or a private conversation. Ethan deserves stability, love, and care, and it sounds like you're giving him exactly that. Don't let your family's guilt-tripping make you question your actions. You did the right thing. Not the a-hole. I can understand why this situation is so emotional for you and your family, but Ethan's well-being had to come first. It's heartbreaking that it came to this, but Amanda clearly wasn't taking her responsibility seriously, and Ethan was suffering as a result. You didn't tear the family apart. You stepped in to protect a child who was being neglected. Your parents and Amanda may not see it now, but in the long run, you've done something incredibly brave and selfless. Don't let their anger cloud the fact that you've given Ethan a chance at a better life. Not the a-hole. You're a hero for stepping in when Ethan needed you most. It's not easy to go against your family and take such drastic action, but you did what needed to be done. Amanda's neglect was putting Ethan at risk, and your decision to involve CPS wasn't vindictive, it was protective. Your parents are enabling her by refusing to hold her accountable, but you're breaking that cycle. Ethan deserves the stability and love you're providing, and I hope you continue to fight for what's best for him. When I was 14, I was R by a close family friend. I got pregnant but gave the baby up for adoption when I was 15. I knew the child was adopted by distant family members who lived a state away, but I did not know their names or what they were like. We received a sum of $2,500 when they took her from the hospital. I do not remember signing anything. I do not know what happened to the friend. I asked to be kept out of the process as much as possible. My mother said he was jailed, but I don't know if he's still in jail, how long he was in jail, or even if he went to jail. I have 2 other children, ages 10 and 7, and am now married. My husband knows about my daughter, but has deferred to me on how we should handle the situation. A month ago, I received a Facebook message from a woman who says she is my daughter. I believe she is because her appearance, and that she has the same genetic condition as my R. She told me that she wanted to get to know me. I spent hours going through her Facebook page trying to decide what to do. I found myself disgusted by her. There are a lot of similarities between her and my R, as she is rude, vulgar, whiny, and smokes illicit substances. She is married, but has a publicly strained relationship with her husband and refers to him by cruel nicknames. I decided that I would not be comfortable meeting her. I blocked her without responding. After a week, I began to receive letters from her, 4 letters in total. I did not read those either, but recently received a phone call 3 days ago. I finally answered. I told her that I was not interested in getting to know her and that she should leave me and my family alone, or I would get the police involved. She began to berate me. She told me that my family was her family. She accused me of not going through proper adoption procedures and that I had maliciously sold her to an A couple as punishment for being born, and that I had held back important information. Without medical records, she lived life as a very sick child and was deeply in debt from the genetic testing necessary to diagnose her illness. She told me that she would be making contact with my family whether I liked it or not. She also said she would subpoena me for my father's name if I did not comply, and that I could possibly be jailed for selling a baby. When I began to cry, she offered me an alternative. Her genetic condition makes getting pregnant more difficult. If I agreed to pay for a round of IVF, she would consider us even and would only try to make contact with her father. Here are my questions. Does she have a legal right to make contact with my family if I tell her to stay away? Could she force me to disclose information about her birth father? My parents are dead, and I do not know how to find out information about the adoption. I did not sign any papers and didn't really speak to lawyers outside of the court case. I am worried it is possible my parents merely handed over in exchange for the money. Could I be arrested for selling her as a teenager? I have money in my savings account and could afford the amount she is asking for. Could I form a contract that would legally force her to leave my family alone if I agreed to pay? One point that has not been mentioned is that you were a minor at the time of her birth. You did not sell her. If your parents did, that's not on you. If the adoptive parents gave your parents money to help with your medical bills, that's legal and not selling a baby. Block this person. She can contact whoever she wants. They can also block her. Do not under any circumstances give this person money. Keep copies of her messages to you. Edit to say, she cannot force you to disclose anything outside of a court action. Even then, I have a hard time imagining the context in which she would be able to bring anything against you at all. She will not be successful if she tries to sue you because her adoptive parents were A. Me, 30 female, Mary, have been married to my husband, Jim, 33 male, for 4 years now. We met through a mutual friend and instantly clicked. We've always been open and honest, and as far as I know, we've never had any major issues. We would argue every once in a while, but the most part, we've been happy. Beginning 2020, pre-COVID, he met Haley, 28 female, 2 years ago. At first, I didn't have any issue with them being friends, as she's just a work friend. He talked to her every once in a while and would let me know. I never asked, he would tell. Plus, she's lesbian. I guess over the pandemic, they grew closer due to the work environment limiting the amount of workers due to COVID. A lot of people would work in teams. You stick with that team for safety reasons. Pre-COVID, it was group setting. Everyone communicated, interacted. Their team consisted of them plus 2 others, 4 total. I never asked how they got paired. I assumed it was random and they got lucky. Their friendship has blossomed, to the point where they've started to hang out outside of work and talk on a more regular basis. Again, didn't bother me. I've seen their text is a bit flirty, but nothing crazy. She asks him about girls and let him know about girls she's talking to, which I thought was weird, but then again, she's lesbian, probably wanted girl advice. Haley later on got a girlfriend using his advice. Fall 2021. Fast forward to present day. They are now nearly inseparable. She calls him her best friend and he calls her a good friend. Constant communication. He tells her everything and vice versa. It's gotten to the point where I'm starting to become uncomfortable with how close they are. I've met Haley a couple of times. She's never been rude to me or anything in the past. She is now married, and I don't think her wife sees an issue with their closeness. But then again, I've hardly interacted with them, so I'm not the best judge of that. Haley had a family barbecue which included me, my husband, Haley, and her wife, plus a couple of their co-workers, and I asked if I can invite some girls, since I didn't really know his co-workers like that. I've always known they were close, but actually seen it in action. During the barbecue, I guess my husband mentioned that we're thinking of starting a family and might start soon. For the rest of the night, noticed that she hadn't really said anything to me, but brushed it off thinking she's busy hosting. One of my friends, Sarah, let me know that when she went inside to get a drink and noticed Haley sitting on his lap rubbing his hair. So she went to one of the co-workers, I guess, to get some intel. He didn't know who she was, so he kind of told her everything. Plus, it didn't seem like she was much of hers anyways. But according to him, she's been like this with him throughout the whole barbecue. She got a bit drunk and heavily started being touchy with him, any given opportunity she would get. Then I realized I hadn't really talked with him since we've arrived, and that he's been with his co-workers the whole night. I overheard one of the co-workers make a joke towards them. "You're lucky she's gay, 'cause my wife would have killed me if she saw me doing this." They all seemed to laugh it off. I didn't want to seem like a jealous wife, so I brushed it off, telling myself she's lesbian, married, and she's not interested. It's my head. I noticed that ever since the barbecue, it's almost like she's actively avoiding me, and when I asked him about it, he said he hadn't noticed a change in her behavior. So I asked him to invite Haley and wife over, since I wanted to know the other spouse better, like couple friends. He didn't seem to have an issue with it. When she came, I noticed that she was acting weird, like she's almost competing with me. For example, when it came time to eat, I told my husband I would make his plate for him, like I always do, and she beat me to the punch. So I gave the plate I made to her wife. As I'm walking to the table to sit next to my husband, she almost beelined to get to the seat. Her wife gave me the "you see it too" look. Anyways, dinner was fine until the topic of kids came up. She asked me if I was pregnant, to which I replied no, but we have discussed wanting to start a family soon. Which she replied, "I know, we've talked to me about starting soon." I thought she meant her and her wife, Casey, if they wanted to adopt. To which Casey said she wanted to, but Haley wanted to carry. Haley mentioned how they looked into donors, but was skeptical due to lack of knowledge regarding medical history. I guess they had a drunken conversation at the barbecue regarding kids. She jokingly said he would be the perfect donor due to their friendship, and he could play the uncle role. Kinda play a father role as a fun uncle. Anyways, at dinner, she mentioned how he offered to be their donors. After that, it kind of got awkward, so Casey changed the subject. Dinner ended early due to Haley not feeling well. "Sorry, but it sounds like she might already be pregnant by your husband. Or soon. Everything you wrote about sounds like extremely disrespectful behavior to your marriage by both Haley and your husband. So you seem to think you shouldn't be upset because she is gay. The thing is, S preference has nothing to do with boundary stomping and inappropriate behavior. Stop trying to be the cool wife. Time to sit your husband down and finally tell him the truth. What she is doing is weird and also out of bounds. It doesn't matter that she is a lesbian. Her motives don't have to be S for them to still be inappropriate. Also, if your husband respects you and your marriage at all, he will take a step back from this friendship and reevaluate it once you talk to him. Yes, it's healthy to have friends. I can tell you though, as a person who does in fact have an opposite gender best friend, there are limits. My mother-in-law is still hung up to Elise as her daughter-in-law. For some information, there was no cheating or anything. My husband divorced her because she decided she didn't want to work anymore after her maternity leave, and my husband had to provide for all of them. He didn't like it, and it ended their marriage. Elise is the one paying child support though, because my husband and I have the twins more than her. My mother-in-law's always asking me to include her as the mother of her grandchildren, as my husband's first love, and that she's alone in this city. that all she does is work, but both my husband and I refuse. Recently, my husband just got a big promotion and is finally landing in the position of his dreams. I was so happy and proud of him, so I decided to host a small party with family, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his family, the lovely twins, and some cousins, as well as friends. I did warn mother-in-law that Elise was not invited, and that if she dared to show up, I wasn't going to open the door. Well, my mother-in-law had the audacity to show up with her as +1, since father-in-law is not here anymore. I said this wasn't a wedding, so there aren't +1s. So I turned to Elise and say she should leave. But my mother-in-law tried to walk past me and said, "Nonsense, we are already here, move, girl." But I said no, and I stood my ground. My mother-in-law tried to play the "this was her house" card, but I just said it's mine now and she's not allowed in. She said, if she's not allowed, then I won't come either. And I was like, "'Kay," and closed the door. When going back to the kitchen, my husband asked who it was. I tell him it was his mother and Elise. My brother-in-law is like, "Did you close the door on my mother?" And I said, "Yes," again. He demands I open it, that I'm a nobody, that it's not my call. And I say that he's allowed to leave with her if he doesn't like it, and he does. My husband doesn't get mad, still enjoys the evening with the rest of the family and friends. But my mother-in-law and brother-in-law said I crossed a major line, and that this won't go unforgiven. Not the a-hole. Your husband backed you up. You gave mother-in-law fair warning and she crossed the line. Not the a-hole. This wasn't an event for their kids. This was an event for your husband. The ex is not his wife anymore and no longer has a place in his life, beyond what he allows. Only a role for their kid's life. The mother-in-law is way overstepping boundaries. The best person to set her straight is her son, which he had better step up and do. He needs to stand by you on this and present a united front to his relatives. You handled mother-in-law's disrespect very well. Brother-in-law also. My wife, Ellie, and I have been married for a year now. Back in the day, Ellie worked as a sports model. Her job required her to meet a very rigid beauty standard and look a certain way. She was always on a strict diet and was severely underweight. Since then, she's gained a healthy amount of weight and muscle and is much happier. My brother, Chris, is wealthy, like extremely wealthy. He's done well for himself and seems happy about where he is in life. He's just got out of a nasty divorce with his ex-wife and has asked to stay with me for a few weeks as he moves into his new place. Chris, to put it simply, has a type. He believes that every woman should subscribe to his type. Any woman who doesn't fit his preference is automatically ugly and unlovable. He wants all women to conform to his standards, hell or high water. 2 days ago, Chris found some of Ellie's old magazine covers and commented on how beautiful she was back then. It's a harmless comment, sure, but he kept bringing it up, how much she's let herself go. I mean, kept bringing it up. Ellie goes for a run every evening, and as she was heading out the door, Chris told her to run fast enough to lose all the flabby bits. She rolled her eyes and laughed it off, but I told him to shut up. The next day when Ellie went to the gym, he told her to make sure to return to her old figure. Again, I told him to shut up and stop fixating on my wife's body. Despite all his comments, Ellie is a little unfazed by all of it. She says that she's used to it. By the end of the day, I was completely exhausted from listening to him. I was at my end, but Ellie, again, brushed him off with a smile and a laugh. When Ellie served him food, he made a joke about paying for her tummy tucks so that I can marry the right version of Ellie. The right version is the skinnier version of her. That comment set me off. I told him that his wife married the wrong version of him, and to pack his crap and leave my house. He did not take kindly to this and complained about how insensitive I was to his situation and how I made a low blow. He eventually left, but Ellie tells me that I could have kicked him out without the comment. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Okay, it was a low blow about his divorce, but given the revolting nature of his comments and the fact that he explicitly insulted your wife while you were putting a roof over his head, makes it understandable. You are only human. You were far more polite than I would have been. Your wife's responses are likely a coping mechanism from many years of prejudice and discrimination. You have a right and responsibility as a spouse to be upset and protect your wife from harm, to which you did. Your brother appears to have very little awareness of his own behaviors, which I imagine contributed to his divorce in the first place. He will either keep up this behavior until he has no relationships at all, or eventually fix himself. Either way, you are not obligated to be around that type of mess to find out.